Welcome to the Double Shot with James and Alex Fitzgerald, your favourite cousins. Today we are in mourning. Her Majesty the Queen. As this episode drops. But there's so much to be happy about, cuz. How much longer do we have to mourn? We get a 4-day weekend here in Melbourne. It's your favourite weekend of the year on the calendar. It's the lads' favourite weekend. Why is that?
Well, it's also producer Nick's wedding day on Saturday this week. So we've got producer Sammy filling in for Nico because he's woken up Monday of his wedding sick. Oh, no.
Hey, yeah, but what is actually happening this weekend, guys?
It's the AFL Grand Final. But it's also Nick's wedding. Nick getting married on the AFL Grand Final day. So I will be there. It'll be one of the first and few Grand Finals I've missed in recent memory. But
God bless that man.
A wedding is a nice replacement. However, though, he is sick. So we're thinking about you, Nico. We hope you make a speedy recovery in time for the wedding.
We're sending him bulk farmer pre-wedding. But it says a lot about a guy having his...
I'm loving our energy. I'm loving our energy today. You have obviously opted to go for a different lunch item to the schnitzel burger today. There's no fatigue anywhere near you today. And I'm still buzzing from my 11 o'clock wild bean coffee. How good was that thing?
Back up the truck. Wild Bean, is that a new cafe in Cannon Hill?
No,
What's
I've gone
so funny?
past. I was driving around the northern suburbs of Brisbane.
Here we go with the story.
Had a meeting.
Yeah.
Had a meeting in the northern suburbs of Brisbane, and it was 11 o'clock. I needed a coffee, so I just thought the next coffee place I see, I'm going in. And lo and behold, the next coffee place I drove past was the BP. The service station, checked in and got myself my first ever wild bean espresso number. And wowee, I asked for an extra shot, didn't need it. It was strong.
Really? They've taken a note out of the McCafe, the feedback they're getting there. The McCafe is great, but it's too weak. I feel a certain type of way about that.
Well,
I'm not sure how I feel.
Their main client is probably a truckie who's needing a dose of caffeine.
I mean, you did say, it was barista made.
It was barista
I'm
made.
quite impressed. I'm thinking you're going in and getting the sort of self-service number, which, by the way, great value. And George in our Sydney office, who's a coffee nutcase, he actually doesn't mind the 7-Eleven, I don't know what brand it is. Maybe it's just 7-Eleven coffee, but I won't drink it. It's my one thing. It's my one vice. I spend money on coffee. We've called this the Double Shot. This is a safe place to be able to say something like that. But I just don't take risks like that. I take calculated risks, as in a cafe I've never been to before in Melbourne. Calculated risk, probably going to be good. Wild Bean, BP, no, not a calculated risk that I
Don't
take.
mock it till you try it. Tell me what coffee are you getting these days? What's are you on some sort of special milk? Do you get a second shot? What are you rocking in and ordering out of South Yarra coffee shops these days?
Double shot latte on almond milk.
Okay.
Preferably. But when I go overseas, I just drink like long blacks because you just never know what you're going to get. And it's easier to drink a long black overseas. We haven't talked about coffee in a while.
I know.
So,
hey, loving your energy today. It's good to have you back to your normal self.
That big green energy. That's just my green screen. Big green energy.
Tell you what, there's a bit of big green energy talk. It's everywhere in the newspapers at the moment. Renewable energy, isn't it? You've just never seen it get so much airtime.
Oh, maybe we should cash in on it. But we have no stats on green energy today. We do, however, have a stat fact for you. No idea if we've got the stinger without producer Nick, but JB, insert here. Stat fact.
The stat man.
Stat fact.
All right.
You brought this one to the pod. It's only fair.
I'm going to hit you with it today.
Do it.
The stat fact is, so last week Uber celebrated 10 years of operating in Australia.
Wow.
And in so doing, they announced that proudly, and fair enough, proudly they have, and I can't use the word employed here because that's still debatable whether they're employees or not, but they have facilitated 725,000 Aussie drivers since opening in 2012. Now, to put that in perspective, that is 3% of the whole population in Australia, and it's more than 7% of our workforce.
Wow.
725,000 Australians. Now, to put that in perspective, they've got 100,000 today, so not all of them are still driving, but 100,000, a not insignificant number, which is about 1% of our total workforce. So in other words, 1 in 100 of all working Australians are signed up to Uber and driving for Uber today.
You know, that is an incredible stat. And I guess keeping it in perspective as well, people can have this job alongside another. Or, you know, when there was 725,000 Uber drivers facilitated by Uber, whatever you like to call it, nice word.
Correct.
Like, you know, they're probably a bit of a side piece. Some of them maybe just, I don't know, in between jobs. Who knows? But a massive drop down to 100,000. Good stat though.
And we're going to talk about it a little bit more when we get to employment data later in the pod. And I've got a little story for people from the weekend. So stay tuned. If you last to the 23-minute mark, then you'll hear the story. Hey, tell me, should we still run this little quiz? Even though producer Nick's not here, should we get producer Sam?
Yes.
To have a crack. We've got a little quiz. So Sammy, say hello to the audience.
Hello.
Sammy. Actually, we refer to him often as Sammy the Stats Man. So this is actually Sammy the Stats Man.
Hello, Sammy the Stats Man. And by the way, he's produced a lot of stats for this podcast. So thank you, Sammy.
He stat facts us.
Okay, so you're gonna hit him with it.
Okay, Sammy, I've done a little bit of digging. I happen to have access to James and I's phone bills.
Dangerous.
Oh, scary thought. Anyway, Sammy, who do you reckon made the most calls in the month of August out of James and myself? And if you'll indulge me, state the number of how many calls. I know it's a complete stab in the dark, but just give it a crack because I thought it was a fun little data find. Who's made the most calls?
I'm going to say it was you, Alex.
Of course you did. Yep. And how many do you reckon?
127.
Mate, low ball.
How'd it go?
What is 100? Hang on. I just
She
want
makes
to back
127 before she's got to the office.
127. That's not even one phone call. No, wait, what?
I don't know what numbers you're doing. For the listeners,
it's 4 phone calls a day.
Very dangerous moment. Alex has the calculator out.
That's 4.2 phone calls a day. Sammy, I mean, thank you, but no thank you. James actually has come in with the most phone calls in August. A little sidebar. I was away for a week in August and then I went and got married, but we did
ask you to look for July, but you haven't come back to us yet.
Oh, yeah, I had to do real work. So I'm like crunching the back of the numbers like on an envelope for me and James's calls just for shits and giggles. James came in August with 457 phone calls totaling 32 hours. Cuz, what are you doing, mate?
I'm surprised by that. I'm not. I think some Russian or someone has got my phone because that surprises me. I don't know how many phone calls that is a day. I would have thought I do 5 or 6 phone calls a day.
It puts your average phone call at about 4 minutes. So, you drive to and from the Gold Coast.
True.
From Brisbane. So, and I know you love a phone call. You know what my question is? Does this include the 3-second voicemails that you love to leave? That really grind my gears. Anyway, I came in with 100 less phone calls than you, 100 and a little bit, at 343 phone calls, totaling 12 hours. You've more than doubled my hours as well. So, I feel like you're always trying to get me off the phone, but maybe it's just in my head. Maybe I'm trying to get you off the phone.
I don't know.
Sammy,
I
are you
dare
staggered?
say, I reckon you probably account for 5 of those 32 hours on my bill.
Trying to shake me off. Very surprising numbers.
I'd love to see the July numbers because I know you were out of action for at least 7 or 8 days there. Hey, tell me some good news. Tell me some good news.
I love good news. I love good news. We call it the good news hotline. Bling, bling. Hello. I love it. Good news hotline. No, we only have good news on this hotline. All right, let's round out this segment. I just wanted to share the good news that I got an old school letter from Macquarie, one of the guys I bank with, one of the bank's lenders, and my savings account, which has stuff all money in, so I might have to shove some money over there, is getting a now 2.75% interest rate.
Wow.
How good is that?
It's very high.
Holy smokes, that is amazing. I remember reading the Barefoot Investor, and he was spruiking 1.25% back in the day with ING. You know, that was before we were sort of at record lows. So I logged into my NAB account. I'm like, how does this compare? NAB, I've got all my savings, 0.85%.
Yeah, wow.
0.85%.
That is a big difference. And you text me that during the week, and I happened to be having my morning coffee reading the paper, and lo and behold, right there is a big Commonwealth Bank advertisement for their savings rates. And I thought, I wonder how it compares to CBA. Yeah. And so I put this little photo. You probably can't see what it says in our little run sheet here. They were advertising 2.1%. 2.1%.
Still up on them.
For accounts up to $250,000 in terms of savings sitting in them.
Yes.
But, devil's in the detail, you only get 0.15% as your standard rate, and then you get a bonus 1.95%, but you've got to make at least one deposit each month of $1,500, and you have to have more money in the bank account at the end of month than you did at the start. Otherwise, you don't get the bonus. So in other words, if you put the $1,500 in and you got more money in there than when you started, you get an extra 1.95%. Without that, though, it's not a very attractive rate.
It's all in the detail, isn't it, Cuzzy? I have no idea what the details are of my Macquarie. I should probably read those. All right, Cuzzy, let's talk about your favourite dinner conversation, politics. Just kidding. You're actually a little bit more interesting.
Hannah doesn't let me bring that up anymore.
There's more to you. No,
it's politics down in your neck of the woods because the Victorian election is up on the 26th of November, and probably for the first time I can recall in many, many years, we have got two political parties that are at completely opposing ends on a big policy matter. It feels like we've been asked to elect, the light blue or the dark blue or the light green or there's been hardly any difference, right? Yeah. The suburban rail loop, maybe give us a bit of context on the project, but it's the biggest infrastructure project in Australia as far as I know ever, and the Labor government, it's one of their babies. They're pushing ahead full steam. The Liberals have come out and said, we would go about it a different way, and it's going to be interesting in the lead up to this election.
It is huge here, huge. Look, it's an interesting election full stop because of our 2-year lockdowns and all of that jazz. But I think, Dan Andrews he's sort of got in the bag. He's a strong candidate here. But of course, I think, who said it? Was it Matthew Guy? He said something along the lines of, for the biggest infrastructure project to be in history, it is the least criticised and sort of pulled apart, which is quite interesting given the spend out of the state, but also federally. To give you an idea, the Suburban Rail Loop or SRLA, the Suburban Rail Loop Authority, the company that are sort of conglomerate that are putting it all together. They've essentially proposed this rail that links the Western Corridor, starting in Werribee, all the way up to the Melbourne Airport, linking to the north, down to the east, and then down to the southeast. So it literally loops you around. It connects one corner of Greater Melbourne to the absolute, top left corner down to the bottom right corner, which, doing in a car is just next level crazy.
90 kilometres. 90 kilometres of rail.
Sorry, that's good context. 90 kilometres. There's people working on it already. They've employed a mozza, and the first stage is meant to be $34.5 billion. And the second stage, somewhere between 50 and 90. It looks like it's blown out from a $50 billion project to $125 billion. So there's obviously the stage 1 and 2, which could be over the next 20 or 30 years. But there's also a lot of the groundwork they do before that. So we've started spending up a mozza. Big discussion, because the Liberal Party is saying here, well, we've got a health crisis here. We need to actually spend this money on hospitals and smaller tier health to basically avert this crisis. And then, of course, he's put in there a bit of housing and stuff like that. So it's very controversial at the moment.
So it costs $125 billion. It was meant to only cost $50 billion. So the cost is blown out significantly, but it's a massive project. The argument for it is that it literally is a city-shaping piece of infrastructure. They are forecasting, or I should say the Australian government forecasting, that Melbourne will have 9 million people by 2056, which makes it bigger than London. For a bit of context. So the idea is that they need a world-class infrastructure system, and I'm sure they do.
Yep.
It is a great debate to be having in the lead up to an election. Regardless of where you stand on it, I think it's good that it's going to be front and centre for the people of Melbourne to sort of have their voice heard and make a call on what's the right way to do it for the city.
Look, and this is the first and last time you'll hear me probably ever agree with Dan Andrews, but he made a point in saying, look, it's been costed. We've put it in the budget. It's completely funded. The only way now you'll spend more is if you scrap
delay it. Or delay it, yes. I do agree. And it is huge. From a property perspective,
huge.
Wow,
Yep.
This would be
Game changer.
amazing for anyone who owns land on the outskirts of Melbourne, that's for sure.
Oh, jobs, infrastructure, connectivity, amazing. Now, traversing a little bit, but still very political. Because your neck of the woods, we've been a little bit favoursome this week, haven't we, where we both live. The Gold Coast report came out last week.
Explosive, you reckon?
Okay, well, we thought it was explosive because I thought the numbers were pretty big. I've been a little bit out of the loop on the Gold Coast of late, but basically the PCA, Property Council of Australia, did a report where they have shown the data of Gold Coast looking that it's going to grow. I've constructed this sentence terribly, but you get it, by 85,000 people over the next 5 years, because a bunch of people from Sydney and Melbourne have indicated they intend to move to the Gold Coast in the next 5 years. Now, 85,000 people, to give you some context, between 2016 and 2021, so the last census data, the Gold Coast didn't quite grow 70,000 people. And that was in COVID, when we had like mass exodus from, Victoria and I suppose Sydney up to the Gold Coast. And still, we're going to do 85,000. So what's that? Nearly 15,000 more people in the next 5 years will move to the Gold Coast. Very topical.
Well, and it is topical, because where are they all going to live is the questions coming out of it. And we're going to talk vacancy and rentals later, but what we're seeing very much in the short term is the HIA and CoreLogic put out a report last week that said the Gold Coast land values in the last 12 months to March tripled. Land prices tripled in 12 months. Such is the shortage of land on the Gold Coast, and that is compared with about a 20% uptick nationwide, the fastest growth in land values in 18 years, all the way back to 2004. And it wasn't just isolated to Gold Coast. Other areas, Sydney, Melbourne, Hobart, all growing by 40% respectively. In fact, a little bit more than 40% in just 12 months, which is a lot of growth. Clearly points to some sort of lagging in planning, but also the value of land and people appreciating that in a post-pandemic environment.
That's right. And I guess to sort of complement that data, maybe that's not the right word to use, because it is a crisis of housing and obviously renting. We had SQM research come out last week and say that the vacancy rates have fallen again. again. Now, nationally, they are 0.9%. 0.9%. This represents the lowest national rental vacancy rate since 2006. Nowhere to rent. In fact, the rental property that I just moved out of, because I'm moving back into the house we've been renovating, they just copped $120 more per week from us leaving and the next guy coming. Crazy. And there's nowhere to park your car.
No. Well, and
God's
even
name?
worse in places like Adelaide, where you've got a 0.3% vacancy rate. So in the city of Adelaide, there is less than 700 properties available for rent. That sounds ludicrous.
Crazy. And true, now we're seeing apartments go up as well in rent, like significantly also, $50 to $100 per week. Although, I mean, I'm probably specifically thinking about Melbourne, where they've had all-time low crisis throughout the last 2 years, and now they're probably just trying to catch up from the mates rates that they were handing out like candy.
And look, for landlords, I think it softens the blow of, the interest rates going up. So I think as a landlord, you've got to remember that you're going to be locking in your interest rates, you're going to be locking in your rents for at least 12 months. Most people sign a 12-month lease. So you've got to bear in mind that if your interest rates go up over that period, particularly if you're on a fixed rate, your interest rates might go up significantly in that time. If you're a tenant, I think you've got to really make sure that you do a couple of things. Pay your rent on time, obviously, but also, try and look after the place, because I think a landlord will always and should always offer, at least a 5% discount to a good tenant, 5% that is off market rate. I don't know if you got anything else out there. It isn't great for tenants. I don't think anyone would say it's sustainable to have, less than 1% vacancy rates, rents going up by 10% annually. You don't want that, but it's hard to see an end in sight when, there just isn't the supply coming on.
That's right.
And we've now opened up the borders. So I just don't see a sort of short, medium-term solution on that one. And I do really feel for anyone who is a tenant there, and likewise landlords. It is a tough situation to be in. You've got, the pressure of your interest rate and your costs going up, but also, I think everyone's human at the end of the day, and you don't want to be pushing the rents too much. It's hard to find the right balance.
Because you know what I was thinking just on this, because we have an extremely low rental vacancy, and then on top of that, we're going to bring in more migrants, and that tidal wave is going to build or snowball in the next couple of years, and we'll probably see considerable more amount next year and then 2024 with the migrants coming in. But you know what I was also wondering is, what about Australians that are just ready to get out and go live somewhere else? And take an opportunity to maybe make some more money and actually leave. I wonder what the numbers are of people leaving to immigrants actually coming here and plugging our workforce. And I saw you put in some data here with Aussies wanting to move overseas, and the percentage of that over the next 12 months. I mean, it looks relatively high in that younger category of 18 to 29-year-olds. It's about 38% of them that want to move away, maybe work somewhere else. My brother might fall into that category, for example.
20% of all Australians, and 40% of those in that 18 to 29 bracket. But the one thing I would say is they surveyed 1,000 people. So I don't know that it's a massive sample size. However, they've been doing the same study for a decade, and the numbers have nearly doubled since before the pandemic. So no doubt, what the actual number is, who knows? But there's certainly, it would seem, there's a significant increase in the number of Australians who are thinking about that today.
I reckon.
Hey, tell me, before we do move on, if you ever did move overseas, where would you go?
Oh, don't ask me that. That's so hard.
If you had to work and live, and sort of, you did it for professional purposes as well as an experience.
Yes, because I think it's really down to that, isn't it? I think...
That's Alex delaying.
I think it would be...
Buying time.
I think it would be somewhere in America, and not like your generic California or New York. It'd be somewhere like Texas, or somewhere a little bit different to where you've gone on holidays before, but you are actually having a bit of a different experience. You might say Europe, but I hate to say, because I've still got in the back of my head, I'm a little bit further away from my family then. I'm just a sucker. I still want to miss out on anything. I get FOMO.
I don't
about you?
I don't really have a view personally. I haven't been to Europe, but I could see the attraction of America. I'd probably maybe go to Canada over America. It just seems like a safer place to be.
Well, that's true.
Well,
that is.
But I do love
that's a key
Australia. It's
factor.
a distant, wherever it is, it's a distant second to Australia. And just to round out on the rental properties too, the rental properties, total rental properties available nationally in Australia is down 14% on this time last year and 27% since the pandemic. And the hardest hit place is actually Brisbane. 20% less properties for rent than this time last year, 40% less than the pandemic. That is what's driving the low vacancy rates and the increasing rents at the end of the day, is just not enough properties.
I think, the only thing as a renter that you can do is just be prepared, get ahead and try to hustle as well as you can, knowing that your landlord may be worried a little bit about interest rates rising and they probably want to keep you. So use that to your advantage. Cuzzy, you led us down the garden path at the start of this. You said you had a story from the weekend that you wanted to share. I am not letting you off this pod until you tell us the story.
Well, the story I wanted to share came from that Uber piece of data. So employment data came out during the week. Employment rate was actually up. The unemployment rate was up from 3.5% to 3.6%. So maybe suggesting that, the RBA, maybe they might be, less inclined to bump rates again. Interestingly, though, whilst the national rate was up by 0.1%, it was down 0.6% in ACT and 0.5% in Queensland. At the other end of the spectrum, Tasmania and Northern Territory, their unemployment rates were both up by 1%. So those seemingly the economy's hardest hit. However, my number one takeaway from the employment data is this: 900,000 Australians have a second job today. That is 7%. 7%, or about 1 in 14 of all employed Australians have a second job.
Well, it doesn't, because I'm freaking out, but it doesn't stipulate they could have 2 part-time jobs.
They could have 2 part-time jobs.
Okay.
But it's the highest we've ever had. It's more than double what it was before the pandemic. It was about 3.5%. And I got to put it down to the gig and shared economy, like Uber. And there is a proliferation. Use that one in your vocabulary going forward.
Don't be cruel. Don't be cruel.
Of sharing and gig economy applications, companies, websites, and the like. Stumbled across one on the weekend, Airtasker. And I thought, Airtasker.
Across it.
And this is my story on the weekend. I stumbled across it because I thought, I wonder what you can do on Airtasker to earn a bit of extra kanga. Well, let me tell you. There is some things in there that
I just got to get my notepad. Yeah. What can I do to earn some extra kanga?
There are some things in there that I did not know you could earn money so easily for. $400 to do a black and white drawing for someone.
You've sent some of those as PDFs.
Didn't specify it had to be good. $400 just for that. $120 clean someone's house. $120, unless it's like Taj Mahal. That's $60 an hour at best. $100 taking someone's couch to the dump. If you got a ute, that's an easy one.
It is.
$150 for washing someone's truck and trailer. Again, didn't specify it had to be good. And then I could even earn $100 for ironing and folding someone's clothes. They're just the ones that I didn't need a qualification or a job for. There was like $300 for, I don't know, changing 5 light bulbs or something that I probably, didn't want to take the risk on. But so many ways. If you wanted to, if you were desperate enough that you needed a little bit of extra cash.
Yep.
There are so many ways today. There's high pages for tradies. There's the Vault, which Hannah's using experimented with to rent out like clothes that you don't use.
Oh, yes.
So many different ways.
Yep. Do you know, we should get Sammy the stats man to have a bit of a look at, and maybe we don't have these numbers, but I mean, Uber was nice enough to share them. But it'd be interesting to know from like Airbnb or Airtasker and stuff like that, if those are up, because Uber might have been sort of swayed by the cost of fuel going up considerably.
Yeah.
Maybe people thought, well, it doesn't economize for me. So it mightn't be necessarily that they're not doing it because they don't want the money. It could be for other reasons. Maybe it's just not working out. Cuz I got a question for you. If you had to get a second job, for whatever reason, or you just wanted to, you're a single guy, you're not really a party animal, and you figure, well, I may as well use my spare time to go and earn some extra dosh. What would you do?
I reckon
knowing the few skills that you have, what would you do?
Yeah, based off it having to fit in to my current,
Job,
lifestyle and all
yes, yep.
I would either deliver stuff. I would either deliver stuff for Amazon or something like that,
Courier,
or I would pick up a morning shift at a bakery. I reckon.
Oh no, oh dear, I can see where you're going with that one.
Well, I figure I'm going to the bakery most weekends anyway, so I might as well just do a little shift, and they might give me some freebies.
Isn't that so true?
And I love
you
the
just
morning
go,
shift. Like you'd just be in from 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, out by 7:30, 8 o'clock, done. What would you do?
I've thought about it a few times, and it's a similar pathway where you say, well, I'm there anyway and I might be able to get some freebies. Well, maybe it doesn't answer the question, but because you sort of need a certain qualification, but I would teach a gym class because I'm going to the gym anyway.
Oh, yeah.
And I would teach
why
spin.
didn't I think of that?
So I'd teach a spin class. So you don't
Can I change my
necessarily... No, you can't. You've locked it in. Don't change it. Don't, Sammy, step away from the deletion button. That's what I would do. And you know what? Even if I didn't have to pay for it, at least it would get me there. I'd be committed.
I like it. Hey, one other question before we move on. I mentioned at the intro that Uber employs or offers
Facilitates,
services, facilitates 1 in 100 working Australians. How many people do you think Amazon employs of the working population? 1 per X amount of workers in America. What do you think Amazon's at? Bearing in mind that they have about 100 and I think they've got 150 million workers. So it's there's more people.
Sorry, so your question is how many in Australia?
No, how many in America? Because they're not really here in Australia yet. Amazon.
I mean, they are, but yeah.
But they're not established.
How many do I think they employ in America?
So one of every how many people? Uber's 1 in every 100 employed Australians.
Yeah, so to 1%. Okay, so I'm just gonna say 5%.
5%. No, it's not that high. It's 1 in every 330 people in America. So it's not that high. So one. Sorry, can you just give us the percentages? Can you give me and the people listening some? It'd be about 1/3%.
Okay, it's 0.33%.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
so they're not even in Australia yet. I reckon that's coming next. We're going to see a lot of people with Uber stickers. We're going to see a lot of people with Amazon stickers down the track.
There are.
Oh.
But the question isn't, and the reason that I wanted some clarity from you is because I was thinking, are there courier drivers employed by them or are they facilitated?
Well, I didn't check if that's just the courier drivers. I'll do a bit of homework. Come back next week.
I mean, Sammy, he said he's going to do it. Sammy, the stats man, he said he's going to do it. So don't you fall into his trap of getting you to do it. That must be wrapping it up. This feels like the longest podcast ever. We can't put the people to sleep whilst they're on their way to work. But how good is a 3-day week? Shut them.
Mate, the rest of us have got to come back Friday. You just rubbing that in. And we all got shafted with a Thursday public holiday because of you guys. Got to come back on the Friday. Yeah, well, they couldn't make it Friday, could they? Because you guys have already got the day off. So,
hey, just watch what you say. We're busy building the biggest infrastructure project in Australia, so I would appreciate if you didn't throw us that kind of slag, All right?
Well, hurry up and build
outta
it.
here.
Hurry up and build it. Get out of here. Thanks, producer Sammy, for filling in.
Thanks, Statsman Sammy. Thanks for listening to another episode of The Double Shot with your favourite cousins, Alex and James Fitzgerald. If you've got a burning question or something we absolutely need to talk about on the pod, please write to us. Both of our emails are in the show notes. For little real estate tidbits and a little bit of banter, okay, a lot of banter, you can follow us on the gram. Our handle is thedoubleshot.podcast. That, my friends, is thedoubleshot.podcast. Until next time, think of us when you sit back and sip your next double shot.